CEO of Universal Giving, an award-winning nonprofit organization helping people to volunteer with top-performing vetted organizations all over the world. And they have a 100% donation goes to the actual cause. All organizations are vetted with a quality model. Universal Giving Corporate helps manage global CSR for companies including strategy, operations, and NGO vetting. Key clients include Cisco, Gap, BHP, Billiton, Fluor, RSF Social Finance, and Symantec. Pamela is a winner of the Jefferson Award, which is basically the Nobel Prize for community service, and has been invited to 3 social innovation events at the White House. Pamela's community service began at the age of 12. She has volunteered pretty much everywhere in microfinance in remote villages in India, crisis relief work in 2000 in El Salvador, sustainable farming in Guatemala with victim of Pol Pot's regime in Cambodia, and indigenous community preservation in Ecuador. She has a political science degree, cum laude from Duke University, and a master's in international communication at the Annenberg School of Communications at USC. It's our honor and privilege to have Pamela Hawley today with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So thank you for having me here today. And one of the things you've asked me to present on is on social entrepreneurship. And a part of it, I think, is important to talk about one's journey in social entrepreneurship. What's your story behind being a social entrepreneur? And also to be very candid about challenges. So I definitely would love questions at the end if we have time, to be able to go over any questions that way. I'm very open and transparent about it. Being a social entrepreneur is just awesome. It's exciting. It's wonderful. And also, there's going to be challenges in running any kind of business or nonprofit or hybrid that you do. There's going to be challenges, and it's remiss to say that there aren't challenges. And I'm happy to disclose what they were, especially since a lot of them were ones that happened very, very early on within the start of it. And if you have a lot of challenges starting up an organization, it's already, challenged to do it. So we can kind of go over what some of those challenges are too. It's one of the biggest criticisms I got as a speaker about a year ago is it sounds so easy, oh, you're so lucky. And I had to then revamp my entire presentation and say, yes, I love what I do. And it has been amazing, but here are the slides on boom, 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 which you'll see today of what has been challenging in part of my pathway. Only then to go back to the joy of being a social entrepreneur. Because as with anything in life, there's positive and challenges. There aren't problems, they're just challenges. Those things in front of you are there to help you realize, okay, what do I need to overcome this? There is not a problem. You'll get kicked out of the Universal Giving office if you talk about a problem. It's only got to be a challenge. So in starting off, I do want to put a little bit of a caveat here. There are going to be some challenging things that I talk about internationally. I just want you to be aware of that, just so that you're aware about some of the experiences that drove me to start Universal Giving. And then one final note, I am a Dookie, as you heard, but I got into Stanford and Duke, and it was the most tearing decisions I ever made between the 2 schools, so I'm so honored to come back here. And do you guys know those, like, post office boxes, like the big, heavy, like, blue ones? You know what I'm talking about? Like those ones, and you put it in there, and when you're 18, you think it's like the mail place of, like, death that you can never pull back your mail? Well, I put in there I was going to Stanford. And I walked across my PJs at my parents' home in Menlo Park, and I went, and I was like, I'm going to Stanford. And I put it in right at that box, right at that moment. I was just about to let that lever go in. And all of a sudden I went, oh my gosh, I'm going to Duke. And I ran back in my PJs in there, and my pigtails, and I'm like, I'm going to Duke. And my parents are like, okay, great. So my point is that you as an entrepreneur are going to have those clinch gut instinct moments where you've made a decision that you think is the right thing, and all of a sudden, that heavy black mail, that mailbox. I mean, I could have called the post office, or I could have called someone and said, hey, I've changed my mind. But to me, that was like almost an irreversible. And you need to get to that point as an instinct, as a social entrepreneur, where you have those gut instincts. Don't ignore them. You could have gone down your whole list of what the right thing to do is. And if your gut instinct and conscience and instincts tell you something differently, that would be one of my greatest lessons to you today, is follow that, because that's your heart speaking, and don't ignore it. All right, ready? Here we go. How people live their lives is a result of the stories they tell about themselves. A lot of you are seeking ventures, things that you want to be able to do. And the most important thing is to go back to your story of what drives you as an individual. One of my other favorite definitions is that with a story, it's a narrative, it's a prose or a verse designed to interest, amuse, or instruct the hearer or reader. Your story has to be compelling. You can't just say, well, yeah, I was walking down a street and I saw that. No, you need to be inspired when you're telling your story. So this isn't just about what your story is, but how you do it and how you communicate it. So here's my story. There I am on the far right. Now, I was an extreme tomboy, okay? Major tomboy. And here I am on my little Izods and all of that. This is probably just about the most feminine I got at that time. I had my little boy cut on the side, and we are in Mexico. This just looks like such a stereotypical picture, doesn't it? It's pretty awful. But we're in Mexico here, and this was probably about 2 years after I grew out of my favorite color being black, and also jumping out of trees to try and break my leg because I thought cats were cool. So that's where the state of Pamela's mind was at that time. So here we are in Mexico. My parents are two of my closest friends, very close with my family. And this was my big epiphany, which is we're here, everything's great. We are walking, down into a marketplace. And what we are going on is from a cruise ship, which was our vacation. And all of a sudden, from that cruise ship, coming out, we go into this marketplace where you hear all these sombreros and this music and everything, and boom, my dad and I look down and we see a cul-de-sac of all these starving, begging children. And at that point in my life, my whole life changed. That was just absolutely unacceptable. My whole life, I went to my dad and I said, how could you not tell me about this? And he said, honey, you're only 12. But that did not matter to me. And now we see kids getting involved in philanthropy at age 8 or 10. Or I was laughing the other day going back to my high school, and I've got like a 12-year-old saying, I've just started a nonprofit and I've fundraised $5,000. And I'm like, well, gosh, what else are you going to do in life? I mean, they're already like 12 starting. I'm like, does anyone play in the mud anymore? I guess not. That was just me. Anyways, so my point is that unacceptable did not leave me. From that point on, boom, there was a straight trajectory up towards service. Listen to that when that happens in your life. Having said that, my pathway, the heart was there on the volunteering side, knowing that I wanted to do that. But the ups and downs to get there were profound. And that's what I'll share with you a little bit about today. So from there, I went to Guatemala. Actually, before that, I went and I did a lot of other things. Before that, in East Palo Alto, going and serving with people who were receiving welfare, doing food, and all these things domestically. But when I started to get older and I could go internationally, these were some of the trips that really informed me. I'm going to Guatemala to help de-lice children. We were going there. These kids sometimes hadn't had a shower for a month, sometimes 2 months. They were overridden by lice, unwashed, all of that. And that's where I thought I was going to do my service. But on the way there, walking to where I was going to do service, and this is what I encourage you, don't miss this. Don't miss this. When you're on your way walking to go volunteer, don't miss the volunteer opportunities in front of you. Because what happened is I saw hundreds of people on the street. They were lying down. They had cloths over their face because they had stolen the glue from the local shoe factory and were so devastated by their lives that they passed out on the street every day by taking the glue and putting in a cloth over their mouths and just allowing themselves to pass out. Don't walk by the volunteering that you have there. And that is something I really learned was like, you're not just going to volunteer at an event. There might be something you can do along the way, or at least be conscious of what it is and see if there are other groups that can help. I also went to India. Now, India is an amazing country. I volunteered 4 hours outside of Bangalore in an incredible situation where we had this little mini car take us, and then we got into a kind of larger kind of cart. And then after that, we got on some horses, and then after that, we had to walk in order to get to this community. Amazing people. They put on this complete celebration for us. We learned everything, so much about microfinance. And one of the things that was just so difficult, and again, this doesn't happen everywhere in India, but in some of the remote villages, this is what happens to girl babies. They get put into a pot, and they're taken care of. And so here we are to go volunteer and learn about microfinance, but you as entrepreneurs can be open to what some of the issues are on your way to go volunteering. This was devastating. Here we are helping people start businesses, but people are dying in their own communities. Those are things you have to be so aware of as a social entrepreneur, eyes wide open about how you can help. And this was definitely part of the reason of the genesis of universal giving. Cambodia. Here we have an amazing, beautiful stupa, which is a commemoration and a beautiful temple that within the village. And I was working with a lot of paraplegics and those who were affected by the mines there, helping them do job training. And I remember standing here this day looking at the stupa, and it was such a beautiful day in this beautiful green grass. And when I was asking my colleague there, I said, this is amazing, you all have such beautiful land, all of that. And he said, yes, the green grass here, Pamela, the reason for it is because of all the people that are buried underneath it. You are standing on mass graves right here. Keep your eyes wide open as to all of this. And what this does is inform you to lead you towards your vision. And for me, it was a life vision of service. I couldn't turn back from this. Once I saw this, I could not go down a traditional pathway. And for me, it was listening and helping people. Here, I'm actually working in a sustainable farm in Guatemala, and I worked very much one-on-one. But as I went down my trajectory, and this is something you'll need to think about as entrepreneurs, is your life one-on-one in tutoring, or is it something larger that would be helping serving and affecting thousands of people, where you are going and you are serving people all over the world? And for me, that was really the genesis of Universal Giving's mission, to help connect people to quality giving and volunteer opportunities worldwide. I realized I didn't want to go volunteer and just do development work or be a part of Peace Corps one-on-one for the rest of my life. That's not a right or a wrong decision. And part of the reasons being vulnerable to you is because I thought I was going to be too lonely. It was too much for me. I was going to miss my family. I was going to miss the sense of community. I didn't want to go be in an isolated village. You have to listen to that and not go, oh, that's what I should do. You have to listen what is right for you to do. And for me, it was right for me to then go into building a website like this that leveraged thousands of people across the world, rather than going into the villages one-on-one. I also missed the business instinct. I wanted to be able to build a business, build a website that scaled a service. So here you can volunteer and donate on Universal Giving. We also go into crisis giving, so you can actually go in and donate for crises, and we help fund those organizations. The other thing is we give a gift. This is one of the most popular things on Universal Giving because 100% goes direct to the cause. So you might want to give a gift to your brother and give him $25 to feed a family in Sudan. Or for example, this is one of our most favorites, is to actually support a chimpanzee. Now, you have to be surprised as entrepreneurs because I thought that it would be something that might be a lot more drastic. But two of our most popular gifts are actually stopping hemorrhaging for women in childbirth and adopting a chimpanzee. So that's something, be surprised as entrepreneurs as to what you think it might be. Because kids are usually what's most funded. But hemorrhaging for women, which is related to childbirth for sure, but then also chimpanzees, animals, is highly popular. Do you know something that we found out the other day on social media? Do you all know what is the greatest animal that gets comments on social media? Anyone know? What? Cats, okay. Anything else? Panda bears? What else? What? Sloths? Sloths, that's a good one. I haven't heard that one before, I have to say. Sloths. Anything else? Pandas by 25%. Ding, ding, who got that? Okay, good. I've got a prize for you afterwards. I'm just kidding. I don't have one. You know what? That's a good idea. Next time, I'm going to go buy a little panda and bring it. That's good. I like that. Pandas by 25%. And in fact, the article was telling this too. I'll have to find out where it was, and I'll get it for you all. But they were saying, don't even try and go secondarily with dogs, because anything even panda-like panda-like movies, anything like that. So now Universal Giving has this whole social media campaign we're about to put up on pandas that will drive them to animals on our site and to try and do that, because it's a smart thing to do marketing-wise to help increase giving and volunteering. As long as it's as ethical, we'll do it. But those are the kind of things I encourage you as entrepreneurs, be surprised. Don't take things for granted that you think would just be the norm, and be watchful of that. So chimpanzees, I always think about that. Fund a project. This is something that's longer term. Clean up a certain portion of a river or build a well. Give a gift is more like a one-shot that can be done very quickly. This is something that's much longer. And then finally, so this might be fund someone's education. You might do it for 6 months or something that's longer. And then finally, give a gift certificate. This, again, is very popular in the sense that people want to make their own decision. So it's something that you can give a gift certificate to someone, and they can do that on Universal Giving. They choose what they give it to a friend, an employee, a family member, and you can do that anywhere across the world. This one is very popular because Universal Giving doesn't take a cut on the donation. You can raise for a cause and create a page that allows you to list, these are my favorite things for the birthday, and drive people to your page. And then people will be able to see all your favorite projects and then be able to go in And some people do it also for crises. So they might do it for a birthday, a wedding anniversary, or even their favorite things to give to for a crisis as well, too, which we've started to see recently. Now, this one's one of my favorite stories because someone created a Raise for a Cause page for a wedding. And basically, they were in Norway, and they came in, and they actually gave all of their nonprofits to a group in Brazil. This is exactly where universal giving is headed, where we are giving country to country all across the world, not just U.S. out, right? It's people setting up these systems all across the world. So finally, with volunteering, because we know volunteering and giving are so conjoined. So those who volunteer are much more likely to give by 2/3. And so we knew that people who were volunteering would come back and be able to give to those causes. And they often set up Raise for a Cause pages. So a lot of our volunteer opportunities have to do with HIV, with kids, with all different kinds of issues all over the world. So our unique model is that 100%. That's our tagline, give your 100%. We don't take a cut on the donation. We haven't for 10 years. We have no plans on changing that model whatsoever. It's a big outlier for us. Second, everything's vetted with our quality model. When I got back from volunteering, I had 6 stages set up for our quality model. Now, how many stages do we have? How many? How many do you think we have? Someone has to know the numerical alphabet some way. Come up with a number. 12, 24. And that, we've just introduced 3 more. There are so many different things that you do on leadership vetting, what venture capitalists do, on OFAC and terrorist lists, on vetting for whether the project is successful over the long term. So many different things that happen on the vetting front. We're now going into vetting on social media. So there's all these different parts, some that are confidential, some not. It's trademarked, and so that we have that, it's not available publicly. We will share certain parts, but it's something that's confidential. We have 2 services of giving and volunteering. This is interesting as social entrepreneurs. For-profit, nonprofit, hybrid. We've chosen nonprofit and we've stayed with it. The reason why, it's because the best thing possible for our brand. As a nonprofit, it connotes transparency. We are give your 100%, and we don't take a cut on the donation. Those things show that it's not that we're trying to make money, but we do make money. And so we'll talk about that today, but we didn't want the making money to be a part of our brand in the sense that people felt that that was our mission. So as a nonprofit, if I ever, as a leader, need to make a decision that I am going to come in and I have to make a decision based on the mission and the heart and the soul of universal giving, I can do that, and I can put that above making money. Otherwise, if I'm a for-profit, I felt that what I needed to do was be able to say, I'm going to have to make money first. So if I have to make a decision for some reason between spending more time one day on closing a corporate deal versus working on something on the website, I can choose our mission if I want because we're a nonprofit. If you're fully for-profit, I'm not sure you can do that. You need to be very focused on revenue as your primary objective. Not that you can't be mission-oriented, but those are some of the balances you need to think about. What is your fiduciary responsibility, or what is your mission responsibility? Now, don't ask me what happens when you're hybrid. I guess you're just cut in half. I don't know how you make those decisions. And then finally, our revenue with Universal Giving Corporate. Universal Giving Corporate, we create and manage CSR programs worldwide. We do strategy, operations, and NGO vetting. This generates revenue for our NGO mission. And basically, one of the key points here is our NGO vetting. So when we go into Symantec or Cisco or Levi's, we go in and we help them set up their global CSR strategy. We operate it for them. We help convene 40 different leaders across the world to help them launch their programs. We take headquarter information as well as work with local employees and make sure that they're heard on the ground. So for example, if a company comes to us and says, hey, we want to just focus on education, but what happens if every day your employees are walking by a slum? Are they only going to want to focus on education, or will they also want to help fund the people in the slum? They're going to want to do both. You have to have a balance. And so we come in and we help with that, and then we come in on the vetting model and we come in and vet all of these different aspects of the NGOs. And from that, with our clients, these are all some of the clients, not all of them, but many of them. And some of our key milestones along this way has been definitely on the corporate side. Because what you do is you look at it, you've got to constantly balance between the two of them. You've got one public service, even though we're not a hybrid, we're a hybrid in our services. You have a public website that helps people donate and volunteer. And then you've got a corporate service where you're consulting on global CSR. And that money from the global CSR feeds in to help with the nonprofit. And so it generates revenue. We are last month we were cash flow positive. So there are times where that way, usually it wavers anywhere between 60 and 120%, depending on how much revenue we do each month. So we have times where we don't need foundation funding, but other times when we need to do it anyways in order to maintain our nonprofit status. Obviously, the more that we can do that, the more countries we can go into. We're in 100 countries. We need to get into 93 more countries and territories. So when people say, oh, you're cash flow positive, you're fine, that's only from a fiscal perspective. That's not from a mission perspective. That doesn't mean we're done with our mission. So we need more cash and revenue to be able to come in and to expand into other areas. So some of our key milestones here are the Jefferson Award. We've been featured on CBS, Oprah.com, Business Week, Fox, White House, Ernst & Young. We've done 15,000 volunteers and then $24 million worth of volunteer hours. So these are volunteers that we're only capturing their 2-week volunteer trips. We're not even capturing the fact that they stay longer, that they brought friends, that they came back and raised for a cause. So there's a lot of information we're not capturing. We actually went very conservative with this. So on our team, this I think is one of the most important things you'll ever do as a social entrepreneur. Building that team is so critical, and how you choose to build it is very important as well. So here, we're 50 people, 70% are interns and returnees. Why do we do this? Why do we do this? Why don't we just hire outright? Okay, yes. You know, that's a good point. That could be a value proposition for it. I'll tell you the reason why. The main reason why is that we actually don't make any hiring mistakes, hardly ever. The reason why is because the people who opt into us have been with us for 6 weeks or 2 months, and what's happened is they buy into our culture and we buy into them. We have found you cannot tell from interviews. People can be fantastic interviewers, but it's a huge cost to the organization if you bring someone on and 6 months later it doesn't work, then go search for someone else for 6 months, and then when you bring on another person, it takes another 6 months to get up to speed. That's 18 months. That's $500,000 depending on how you pay. All that time lost, everything. But if they come in as an intern, or if they come in as a returnee, which is we have a lot of professionals who come back. One person is a NASA engineer. She's working with us on global CSR. She works for us at night. So she comes in and she does work for us 10 hours a week. But we can see how she works. And then what we can do is we can start to convert to paid based on how those people are committed to us or not. And then they learn and see whether it's good culture for them as well too. So what you're doing is it's a good hiring practice that allows this dating process to go. Do they want to be with you? Do you want to be with them? And saves you a tremendous amount of time in mishires, which can be incredibly costly and hold you back from what you're doing. Our interns are global. It's all across the world. 80% of our paid staff. Our COO was a returnee before she became our COO, and she worked her way up. So these are kind of things that this is an absolute feeder to us. This isn't just a feel-good, come be an intern. That's why we don't call them volunteers. We're coming in, we're grooming them to see, are you someone who could be a part of our team? Flexible positions and work share. My COO has got 3 kids. My senior manager of operations has 2 children. They split it. One's back in New Hampshire. One is local here. Someone does more in office. The other one does more out of office. So we work on that. We're age agnostic. We have people who've come on board who are 22 and doing phenomenal work. We don't care how old you are. We care that you've got great execution and great attitude. And if you can figure out and come on board, it does not matter how old you are. I have a woman right now, she's 22, and she is presented to Cisco, to Samsung on the phone. Why? Because she can do it. So if you come in and show that you can do it, we'll train you, but if you can do it, you'll get that position and ability to do it. There are 30 and 40-year-olds that can't do it. So I encourage you, be age agnostic. Do not be held to the fact that this person doesn't have experience. Give them the experience. Do that. Get on the phone with them and train them, and then say, okay, you're going to present this small portion of it, and then if they do well, then keep allowing them to do it. It's amazing if you put that belief in people, how much they'll rise to that challenge. Our team is in-office and virtual. We have a globally diverse workforce. We represent more than 28 countries across the world. And we also have a network of universal giving ambassadors all over the world. People contact us from different countries. People are out of work a lot in the continent of Africa, and they say, how can we help? They're helping us on social media. People that we've never even met, and they find out about us. So we use those ambassadors to help spread the word. So we are basically this go-to site in quality giving and volunteering across the world, really getting to some of the most remote local NGOs that we can. And this is where we want to create this world where giving and volunteering is a natural part of everyday life. The way we look at it is that it should be as natural as you being on your cell phone. If it's that important to you to text, it's that important to give $5 a day. There's no reason why you can't do that. And so we look at that and say, at some point, we hope that giving and volunteering is so natural, you pay your cell phone bill, you have a cup of coffee, and you give. And that's just what life should be like. It's not even a question as to whether you volunteer or not. And I will tell you, I won the Volunteer Service Award in my high school. Now I think that might be very competitive. I think, first of all, people didn't even know what it was, and I don't think anyone else wanted it. So I think things have changed a lot, now where we see people need to have it on your resume. Okay, so all this looks really great. Looks super clear, super easy. But on the way, I had a midlife crisis. And my midlife crisis happened to happen at age 25. The same time with my dad. My dad and I went through our midlife crisis at the same time. I'm not kidding. All right, so here we go. I left 4 jobs in 4 years. I was out of work for a year because of recession. I worked as an unpaid executive assistant because a businessman didn't think I deserved to be paid. I worked as a step aerobics instructor, counseled recovering alcoholics on Skid Row, and was fired as a waitress in Venice Beach. Does anyone want to know why I was fired as a waitress on Venice Beach? You want to guess why? Come on, you guys, you got to guess. Like, what could I have done wrong? I'm a pretty nice person. Well, I'll tell you why. And it's embarrassing. But why did I want to be a waitress? Anyone know why I wanted to be a waitress? What? Cash tips. Okay, that's a good point, but it wasn't. Okay, anyone else? Okay, that's another good point, but it wasn't that either. Okay, anything else? Those are both good. I wanted to because I thought it was such a great way to serve. I love people who serve, and I thought that would be so neat. Meals are so important to be able to serve meals to people. But you want to see what it was like for me? This is me. That guy fired me so quickly it wasn't even funny. Forget the 2 hands. I'm like carrying it with 2, no, this was 2 hands, 1 plate, okay? I shook, which is so funny because now I do acting and I perform improv on the side. My hand shook, you guys. It was so awful. I could not get the food. I just thought I was going to be like Lucille Ball and like there'd be cream puffs all over. I just was so afraid. And the guy was French and I spoke French and his words were not kind. And I was out of there and I just was one more thing that was just rocked me to the ground. This is coming out of Duke. I was cum laude out of Duke. And at that time, there was not a pathway in social entrepreneurship. And basically what happened was that most of my friends were doctors and lawyers and MBAs. And for the first 4 years, my friends were like, what is it that you're doing again? Okay, and Pammy's changed jobs again, and oh, there she goes again. I remember my sister at one point said, in kind of a high-pitched voice, I know it's all going to come together someday. It was very sweet, and she was right. It's kind of how my life works sometimes. It's kind of like, and then all of a sudden it all comes together. Did you like the sound effects? No one liked those. Okay. So, I share that with you. I don't really like this slide. I really don't, because I don't think it's positive, but it's real. And that's why I got really, really criticized as a speaker. It was all too seamless. It was all, like, where's the challenge? It's just easy for you. I wish my life was as easy as yours. It wasn't easy. I was devastated. I was just so, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I just literally then went into another slide. I started a business and it didn't get off the ground. Devastating. I was 24 years old. Full business plan, everything. Turned down by a PR firm because I didn't have an internship. I got the internship at Chiat Day. I took it away as a 24-year-old from like an 18-year-old. I was there for 7 days, called back the PR firm, and the PR firm accepted me because I had an internship for 7 days. Okay, no comment. I should probably blot out that ad firm. Okay, I went to an ad firm, and since this is being filmed, too late. Okay, good lesson for me. Guess they're going to be a corporate client tomorrow, right? Okay. Masters in Communications. Here is where this was starting, where it started to turn. because I went internationally and I'm going to leave school and I'm going to go abroad and go do this abroad. And I started to get more involved internationally. This was starting to be more of a turning point. I focused on broadcast journalism because I wanted to change the tenor of media news. Now you see social responsible journalism, but back then you didn't. So this was something where it was starting to turn, but in that situation, what happened is I was told I would never make it due to my values and because of the fact that all that really mattered was eye candy. And Eric, who's now at ABC, came back and goes, oh gosh, Pamela, is this another story about deaf people? Is this another story about people who are handicapped or disabled or all of this? Because look, we need to cover things that people are going to watch. But now more and more people will watch this socially responsible TV, whereas back in my day, that wasn't the case. So I had to make a decision. He's like, are you going to sell your soul and go cover all these murders that you don't want to cover? I don't have a problem covering murders, but I want to cover it with solution-oriented. And I think that's where it was a challenge for me. So basically, this is where I fell in love. The introduction to the web. Because then I could see scale. And I could see that dreams could take place. And this is where for me, I was like, oh, wow. Because we could get and reach so many people. This is from one of my interns. I think she's great. And I love her visuals. She's super. Oh, this is so funny. She's like, you don't even see what I've done today. I'm like, you're right. Surprise me. That's hilarious. I'm going to tell her I like that. So part of these slides I purposely don't see, so my reactions are authentic. I use part of improv in my presentations where I say, don't show me these slides, because I want to keep that flow, and I don't ever want to become a cement presenter. You know, those people who just know their whole script. So sometimes my stomach does churn because I actually don't know what's coming next. Okay, this is going to be fun. There's a couple more of them coming up. Challenges to starting universal giving. So you saw the challenges of my personal life, right? You saw that kind of midlife crisis. Here, challenges starting universal giving. Worked out of home for 2 years without pay. I used $80,000 of my own, not salary, this is actually my savings, to launch. I knew being in Silicon Valley, you need to show that you're in the game. And part of that is by your time, it is by your funds, by your resources. It's your responsibility as well to get people galvanized around what you do. Get volunteers. I don't care if you're for-profit. You can get volunteers to galvanize around you too. Show that. And I had to fight a lawsuit regarding our name. It affected national foundation funding. It was a huge distraction. And this is just was bombarded for me. It was just like, I felt like all these things were coming towards me. And it was all this mix of like challenges, and yet at the same time, you will not give up. And why did I do this? And no, and I was scared. In fact, in my room, I was in a very small room, and I had a huge whiteboard. And every morning I woke up, not to birds chirping or to the sunlight, but a huge whiteboard that was in big black letters, very not my personality. And it said, you will not give up. Because I was so scared. You will not give up. You need to have that tenacity. Because there are going to be things that are challenges. And you need to know laser focused you're going to make this happen. Don't go into this thinking, maybe this is something I might want to do. Do it. And I had to scare myself so badly into that, say, you will not give up on this, no matter how hard it was each day. So your journey is about your personal story. You got to go back and connect, like I did in Mexico, with what that journey is. And find that story, find that passion, so that you can really make that story drive it. Because I remember those kids on that cul-de-sac, and that's what drives me every day. That and the fact of just not giving up. And it comes with challenges, and they're okay, because it's not just about becoming stronger, it's about helping other people. So there I did it. I presented not just the positive, but also the challenges. Was that challenging enough? I think it was challenging enough. I'm not going to ask your questions and feedback on that. It was challenging enough. It was challenging enough for me to relive that with you right now, okay? Because my stomach is churning right now because of going back over those emotions. This is hard for me. Because I'm a really happy person right now, and I just went back. That was my personal story. That was how hard it was, okay? During that time, this will be another good slide, I ran 4 marathons without training, and here's why. Every time I faced a challenge that I was really, really tough, I was like, if you can make it through this marathon without training, I made it this one step, this one step, this one step. I realized your only reason you won't finish that marathon is if you decided to not take that next step. It's the only reason. And I went over my gratitudes and all of that, and my deal with myself is you don't ever stop. So I didn't stop. And I kept taking one step, and every time I did those marathons, I was like, okay, if I can get through that, let me tell you, your body doesn't like it. My body totally overheated. I was like a red tomato by the time I got done. I was like total thermostat or whatever you call it, something like that. Oh, that's the measure of the weather. No, not the weather, if you're thinking. No, it was like a heating blanket. But the point is, there may be times when you need to find other analogies or other things to help you get through a challenge. And who knows what that might be for you, but use those things to inspire you. And do remember this, whether you choose to run or not. A marathon is just made up of steps. That's all it is. You do one step, you do the next. And the only time you stop is if you told yourself you're going to stop. Why'd you do that? Why? It's just a decision in your mind. Go do it. How do you want to start your journey as a social entrepreneur? Personal story, ladder, and the right building. Your personal story determines your ladder. What I mean by this is you need to figure out where you're climbing. All of us had pressure. I had pressure at Duke. Become an MBA, a lawyer, a doctor. Here's your track. Super easy. That would have been really neat, that track. But at the end of the day, you got to figure out what the point of your ladder is, and that is the ascending stages that you progress. And if you go up as an investment banker and you love to do that, great. You should do it. But if you're going up that investment banker route and ladder because you think that's what you should do, that's not your calling. Now, if you've got loans and you figure this is the best way that you need to do it for an interim stage, then absolutely do it. There are responsibilities we have in life. Not everything is just a clear shot out. We have not all of us get scholarships, or we have loans or things like that. But understand that it might be interim and not to get trapped into it. I have friends now who put all this investment into being a lawyer, and they don't want to be it. And they're good at it, but that's not what their heart is. And what happens is you start to deaden yourself, and you don't become who you're really supposed to be on this earth. You just don't. And you're depriving yourself and others from that gift. Even if it's something you do on the side. You might want to be an amazing gardener, then do it at night when you get home. It doesn't always have to be full-time, but do make sure that you do it. So where are you climbing to, and how are you growing? This is one of my favorite slides. She totally shocked me at the last presentation when she did this. I love this. Anyways, here's, oh, whoa, no, we're not going off that yet. So here, you've got all these ways that you're growing. How are you growing? You could be Jimmy Fallon, you could be Obama, or you could be my sister on the right. She's an interior designer, and she grew up into a beautiful flower. It doesn't matter who you are, right? See, otherwise, if you don't do this, presentations are boring. You got to have things that shock people, right? Like, this isn't shock. I'm not a negative person, but whoever sees flowers on a social entrepreneurship presentation, well, and definitely not like squiggling ones. See, this is why I love interns. I'm like, yeah, just put Ellen DeGeneres' head on it. She's like, really? I'm like, yeah, do it. Make them wiggle. Flowers are, they're moving in the wind. Okay. So here's your ladder, or here's your ladder. Or it might be a really tall one, or it might be this, and it might hurt a little, but don't worry, you're going to rebuild these rungs. So don't worry about that. It's important to choose the right building in which to choose your ladder. Maybe it's up in the sky, or it's down to earth, or it's cultural, or it's agricultural, or it's downtown, or it's South America. Look at all those buildings that you can build on. Think about that organization you want to work at. It's not just an accountant. It's what firm is an accountant. Is it a small accountancy firm, or is it an accountancy firm that's got 500 people? You have to think about what that building is you're going at. This isn't just, I want to be an accountant. This is also, what firm do I want to be at? What culture is it like? Do they work 10 hours a day? Do they work 6? All of that, right? You need to think about your ladder and your building. It's okay to change buildings. You already saw how many buildings I changed and how many ladders I changed. So I went through maybe like 16 ladders and 44 buildings. So you guys can do that too. Now we're moving more. You've heard about my story. I've been vulnerable with you about this. Let's move more into social entrepreneurship and what this means. You've got a public service from me, revenue generating service. I think this is important in the sense that you can, let's go back here a second. To me, this is the definition. There are some people that say you can just run a nonprofit and it's positive that way, and that's just how it is. But for me, you need to generate revenue to be a true social entrepreneur. You could be for-profit or nonprofit or hybrid, but unless you can monetize your service, I don't think it's true social entrepreneurship. You need to show that you are an entrepreneur and that you can monetize the value. Might not be 100%, but that's my definition. There's different definitions out there. The structure, Can be for-profit, socially responsible for-profit, nonprofit, or hybrid. For me, and why this was important is growing up, I wondered why issues in Syria were on page 306 of the news rather than the front page. So for me as a social entrepreneur, that was something that I had to get out as a social entrepreneur. Why I wanted to do this, I wanted to do it because I wanted to make a lasting global difference. We already talked about the web and how important that was. For me, I needed to find a product that I loved to sell. So these are all my reasons kind of behind social entrepreneurship. I was willing to be a salesperson, but I wanted to sell solving global poverty. So you might use sales, but just think about what you're selling. I had a need to be efficient and effective, and I also wanted to create a model that could be a model for other social entrepreneurs. So I think you have to think about this. What are your reasons why, for me being a social entrepreneur, these were my major reasons. So why universal giving? For me, this is one of her new ones. Wow, that's an attractive woman. Loved what I learned in leadership for the first 3 years at Universal Giving. My brain felt like I was exploding. I had been COO and operations at Volunteer Match before. To get on a CEO level and make decisions where I was used to making 2 decisions a day that were major to making 15 a day kind of broke my brain for a while. So it's something you realize you have to grow that way. For me, I have an insatiable desire to learn. Being CEO helped with that. And then I could explore different business units, and I love being challenged. The other thing was closing corporate partnerships to make clients' lives earlier, putting interns in a position to make a difference, working with high-level board members, making donors feel secure that money goes to the right place, creating a dynamic office, working in a global movement. All these things for me was building this amazing structure in-house. Wow! Look at that! That's amazing. It even has sound effects too. I guess that's the Universal Giving house. Should we see what happens next? Maybe they start dancing. Oh, well, that's a bummer. They should have started dancing. Okay, so here's the point. We're building this structure of Universal Giving, and I thought that was great. Here's one of the reasons. What you're doing is you're building it step by step, all these things, these corporate partnerships, interns making a difference, working with high-level board members, helping donors make sure their money goes to the right place. You're creating this dynamic office, and then you're helping people really help build this house this way. So Universal Giving, I wanted to have people feel wealth, and what I mean by that is not financially, but love of family. Part of the reason with universal giving is to help feed Maslow's basic needs, but then get people to a level where they can find a calling, because I have a calling. And so that's a part of my mission too. You have to think about it as an entrepreneur. It's not just what you love, but what about other people? And then also providing a place for opportunity and great management. So for us, we wanted to be able to show a pathway for interns and returnees of where you can go. So to me, you have to think as a social entrepreneur as well, what is this culture you want to build? So what is that culture that can help you build a great organization? You're not just promoting a product. You have to think about building a great organization. And then finally, this is interesting. I do think about this at night. One of your greatest responsibilities as a leader is what people say at the dinner table when you come home at night. Do they come home and complain about you as a boss, or do they say what you said was positive? So every day, even if I'm tired, I think about the fact, shoot, are my employees, when they go home at night, are they going to talk about they had a great day, or are they going to talk about the fact that Pamela was tired, or maybe she wasn't as patient as she could have been, or whatever it would be? Your responsibilities as managers, leaders, you're affecting those dinner table conversations every night. You think you're affecting global poverty? You might be, but you're definitely affecting people's day-to-day every night you go home. What are they saying at the dinner table? They're either talking negatively or positively about the day, and that's your responsibility every single day to affect people's lives positively. So it still won't be a smooth ride. Challenges you may face, revenue goes down, you don't make your targets, you disappoint people like the board or a funder who believes results should be different, team members you love who leave. Competition gets so fierce that it affects foundation funding. Competition should be viewed as competitors' collaborators. You might collaborate with part of your competitors on some aspect. Other ones you might not. But it's important that you think about that and not just look at it as a negative. And you might not be best friends with your competition, but you can think positively about them. Don't denigrate them. It's not worth it. You're all doing something. We're all doing something good for others. Don't go down that pathway of pushing down your competition. You don't need to do that. You can figure out what your differentiation points are, speak to those, and move on. More challenges. You were asked this, so I'm candidly there. I haven't yet reached my dreams. So there's other things that I want to do. For me, I want to be able to, oh, wow, this is another good one. This is great. Looks like they're surfing on this one. I'll have to ask her what she was thinking about. But on this one, I think we're on surfboards here across the world. And I haven't yet reached my dream because I want to be able to connect people all over the world. And that's what I want to be able to do. And so with Universal Giving, we're in 100 countries. We've got 96 other countries and territories, and they're hard. Because I want, heart of heart, to get into Syria and to get into Iran and all those places now. And it's going to take a lot more money and a lot more time to be able to do that. The elements of social entrepreneurship, what do I need to overcome these challenges? You need a team, you need to light it up, and you need to build it, and you need to run. And what I mean by that is one of the most important things you ever do is your team. Who are the right people you get on your bus? As a team for a social entrepreneur, you need to have your family, your team. You need to have unaffiliated advisors, people who are not involved with your team at all. That's very, very important as well. People who are not formally involved. You need to have friends, and you need to make sure you have a board of directors and advisors. So it's both personal and professional. One thing that's important is to notice how many people help put you together. I say that I've been put together by many people because we are all helped by people. So for example, my mom, during this presentation, helped pick out my dress. My friend helped me pick out these boots. My sister helped me pick out this jacket. My nephews tell me that they think this dress looks cool. People put me together. Absolutely, they do. There's people, for example, at Universal Giving. They set up the speaking engagement. They help with presentations. They get my expenses. Social media. So you have to remember to thank everyone who got you there at every point you possibly can. You think these things are about EQ and soft skills and that you're moving quickly and you don't need to thank people? No way. You need to make sure you're thanking people all the time. You think this is something you don't need to know as a social entrepreneur? Anything in life, you need to be thanking people all the time because they help get you there. Most important element as a social entrepreneurship in leadership or in life is gratitude. That's the number one thing you have to think about is gratitude, because with that, it will take you everywhere. It will open up more doors. So have that gratitude and be able to focus on that as you go into your final elements of social entrepreneurs. Your team, you're lighting up, you're build it and run, get ready to go. Light it up, that's your idea. You've got to come up with a great passionate idea. You build it step by step. You build this house. If you don't take care of it, it gets demolished. When you build that house and you build your organization, you've got to constantly refine it, otherwise it breaks down. And run. Then you got to start, and you got to midway through, you're going to be peppy, then you get really tired, then you got victory. It's going to go up and down all across, or victory might look like that. There are days when you're tired, right? There are days when it looks like victory and times when you're tired. Victory, tired. Victory, tired. Yep, that's what it's like. One more time. Ready? Victory, tired. Okay, that's enough. But remember, she didn't put that, I did it back and forth here. She's not like she put it in the 16 times. That would have been kind of crazy. That's actually would be kind of a funny trick if she did that. But remember, marry your story. Here I am, just coming out of tomboy phase, right? My favorite color being black. My dad saying, wow, I was really worried for a while. Worried about what? He's like, well, you know, you wouldn't be a girl. I'm like, okay, well, sometimes you wait for things. You have to marry your story with your calling. Go back to what it is in your heart. Find out what's in your heart and that really, really drives you in what you love to do. And live that as much as you possibly can. It's not perfect. You saw my pathway wasn't perfect. But one thing I am doing is I'm doing what I love to do. And I fought to do what I love to do. I'm so grateful for it. And it felt really hard. And so thanks for listening to me today. And I hope you enjoyed my candid presentation. Done. I hope I didn't go too long. I definitely gave you Social Entrepreneurship 101 and then my personal life, but I don't know, we might be over time, but if you wanted to ask a question, I don't know, is that okay?
That's perfectly fine.
Okay, fine. Does anyone have any questions, anything more I need to bear about my life since I feel incredibly vulnerable right now? Seriously, please ask. Yes.
Have you ever faced any criticisms about why you are the
Interesting. You know what I get more? I get more probably, I've gotten this 1,000 times. Oh, I had that idea. And there's a part of me inside that just, I'm very usually positive person, but there's a part of me inside that's like, okay, like it's one thing to have an idea and to take it through to fruition, right? Two very, very different things. Oh, I had that idea too. And part of me goes, did you take it there, right? And what it takes to take it there. I think that, you know, I always had very entrepreneurial instincts. So for example, when I was growing up, I had a big sign on my door that was called Pam's Place. And from a very early on, I was selling things to my dad. So I went and I tried to sell him pencils. What's your name? May? So May, I would go into my dad, I'd try and sell him pencils, and he'd go like, Pamela, this pencil, I can go down to Walgreens and I can get 10 of these pencils and you're trying to sell it to me for 10 cents. And I can get 10 of them for 10 cents at Walgreens. Tell me how it's special. I went back to my roommate and I uncovered my whole sparkle box because I love sparkles. And I went through and I put sparkles on it and I put so much glue all over it and I came back with this big gloppy pencil and I said, Dad, is this a special pencil? And he goes, oh, yes, this is a special pencil. I'll pay 10 cents for this pencil. I was like, does Walgreens have this? Oh, no, honey. Walgreens doesn't have this. But think about how much that affected my life, right? Because I was learning entrepreneurship at that time. You need to deliver value, right? So what I had going for me was being very entrepreneurial. What I also had going for me was volunteer match in some levels, but in other levels not. That was actually, being a co-founder of Volunteer Match did actually not behoove me in a lot of ways. I thought it was going to get me a lot further than it did, and it didn't. It was very interesting. You start out a new venture, you got to prove yourself again, often. This is not just I have this track record and experience to do it. I actually didn't get that as much. I didn't. I think that maybe because you know why? Is because when I co-founded Volunteer Match, I was 26. So I think maybe if you start something, like a lot of entrepreneurs start things in their late 30s, early 40s, then you might get that question more, but I didn't have that much of a track record at that point. So I was young enough, I think, that I didn't get that question. I'd be curious if you asked that of someone who started their venture later. Any other questions? Yes.
I'm so energized by just your persona and your excitement about this, and really thankful for your vulnerability and for sharing your story. So first and foremost, just want to thank you.
Thank you.
And I'd also love for you to see, since Universal Giving gives you this amazing platform to kind of have your hand in so many different types of issues affecting the world, what you see as some of the most salient problems that the next generation of social entrepreneurs need to think about solving.
Yeah. As an improviser, I try and go with the first thing that's off the top of my mind. And a lot of times people think it's going to be an issue. But what's your name?
Jen.
Jen. So I think, Jen, part of it is that projects that are well-meaning that don't do good work. So for example, part of with our vetting model, what we're looking at is there are people who have really, really good intentions. But for example, there was one project, not on Universal Giving, where people were going in and drilling wells. And what was happening is they were surfacing all this water that was poisonous and contaminating it, and they ended up literally even killing people. So one of the things that I see as one of the biggest challenges in development is, first, we all know you got to ask the local people first, is this what you need? Second, you got to make sure it's safe and the right thing to do. There's other things, too, that I think are very challenging. For example, when I was working in Guatemala and we were working in the fields, a lot of what we were doing on the farms is a lot of the Western thought was coming in and changing the way that they did farming. Well, sometimes that's good if you've got some good practices, but not if it goes against the culture. So, for example, in Guatemala, they put in 5 corn kernels. And one was for God, and one was to bless the family, and one was to bless the earth, and all of this. And Western thought came in and said, that's a waste. You're wasting money. Don't do that. Only put in 2 kernels. But you're destroying and you're ripping out that indigenous culture and that whole ethereal, spiritual sense that needs to be a part of growth and in their lives. And you're ripping that out. And so you think you're being more efficient, but you're not. So a lot of my answer to your question doesn't have to do necessarily with where, you know, the crisis is or the biggest issues, but it has to do with the way that the projects take place. Now, here's one of the biggest things that I've learned the most. Everyone's got their cause, and people will come to me and say, this is what we should be doing, and this should be doing, and all of this. I think that the best thing is really holistic. I know if you say education is the most important thing, if those kids don't have food in their belly before they start, they're not going to be able to concentrate. But if I give the kids children and they well, that would be awful, just give you children for breakfast. Okay, we'll reverse that. If I give the children food and don't give them education, they're fed, but they're not trained. So to me, it's extremely holistic. Whenever so many people say this is the most important cause, really? If you're telling me water is the most important cause and you have no food, if you tell me food's the most important cause, but water, I think it's all holistic. But the biggest thing too, Jen, that I think is and this is what pains me the most, is all the crises that happen all across the rest of the world that no one thinks are crises. So I'm in Peru and I'm outside of Lima 1 hour. Lima's a beautiful town. But 1 hour outside, the average number of children that women have are 6. And there are no shelters there, or at least when I went there, there is no shelter. And the abuse rate of women is between 60 and 80%. So you cannot leave the family because there's no place to go. And then what happens to your 6 children? And there's not job training. Now it's getting a lot better, but that's only 1 hour outside of Lima. That's not a crisis by our world standards. It is to me. So I guess I would redefine what crisis means and encourage us to look at that. It's not just the typhoon. Anything else? Okay, I think I might have gone over. Thank you very much for having me.